Welcome to Reflecting Light. This podcast is about filling the world with light by exploring myth, ancient texts, scripture, great works of world literature, and the works of artists, past and present, for those who have eyes to see and ears to hear. And now, here is your host, Mandy Green.
Hello and happy Halloween weekend from Reflecting Light. Today we have a super fun podcast about the magic of Harry Potter. And I chose this because I think there's a lot of really interesting threads we could pull about magic. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about the Harry Potter series specifically, because so many of us are fans of that work, and it's actually laced with a lot of really ancient and hermetic types of themes, definitely archetypes and wisdom that we can learn from. So let's jump in. In ancient Egypt, or Kemet in the Egyptian language, magic was personified as the god Heka and was an integral part of the religion. It was practiced by all the lay person as well as a priest or someone in the priestly hierarchy. Now, the main principle of magic in Egypt is the power of words to bring things into being. Now, maybe when I use the word magic, it's got this cultural connotation of heebie-jeebies. I don't know what we're talking about. I don't know if we should go there. And I think the best way to describe magic is to turn to another really popular series called Star Wars. And if you look at the Force, you understand that there's both a light side and a dark side to the Force. And it depends upon the person who's wielding the Force. So in terms of the Force, that's pretty clear, right? They're using the same power, but they're using it for different means and for different ends. And the same is true of true magic. It depends on who's wielding it and their motives. For instance, black magic would be something that's used for a selfish means or to subjugate or harm someone, whereas white magic is used to bless. It has a very selfless, altruistic motivation to it, is what I would probably say. Because the divine had the ability to use words to shape nature and supernatural things, I should say, it was said that the divine or the gods had given humans some of these words and some of these phrases that they could use to shape the natural and supernatural world. So I just want us to think about it in a little bit different terms and understand that in a Western connotation, anything that the predominant religion disagreed with, they would put it under this title of pagan or heretical because they didn't want any issues with it. But pagan in Latin simply means like the country folk. And so even in its more ancient context, it was like, oh, you're so uncouth, you're so backward, you're still practicing the old ways. You're such a pagan. But in our world, it means black magic, right? Witchcraft, somebody who's off the beaten path in a negative way. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of background there with magic. Usually good magic is sometimes spelled with a CK or a K, M-A-G-I-K. That's one way to differentiate between the two. But maybe it's just we're getting caught up in semantics and words, because if we look at the very first book of Genesis, it says that the Elohim spoke and light appeared. So maybe it's not as different as we thought. I just came back from Egypt. It was amazing. Amazing. Huge shout out to my Egyptian family. We grew very close. And we had a wonderful time tromping through pyramids and riding balloons and learning so much. And one place we visited, I love you all, by the way. And if you have any desire to go to Egypt, you should jump on our January trip, because I don't know how long this is going to last as far as our ability to get in and show you some of these amazing things. One of the sites we do visit is called the Pyramid of Unas. He was the final pharaoh of the 5th dynasty in Egypt. And in his pyramid, the Pyramid of Unas, which is found in Saqqara, there are thousands of inscriptions all over that pyramid that are said to be magical inscriptions, things that would protect you and see you through the afterlife. And they were very protected. They were only given to people who were worthy of knowing and being able to use those words. And then it, of course, became profaned. But I'll put up a picture of the walls of the Pyramid of Unas. It's a really, really unique structure. It is the oldest religious text we have in the world. How's that for awesomeness? The oldest religious text that we have in the world. So something interesting about magic and its roots and what it really means and where it really comes from and how it's been kind of twisted and tainted as we've gone through time. So in that sense, let's jump into the wisdom of Harry Potter. And I'm using this in a modern sense. I know I always use wisdom in a female deity sense, but today it's going to be wisdom in our current context. The things you can learn from Harry Potter. Maybe we'll say that. Let's start off with a Dumbledore quote. Most of these, let's be honest, are from the very wise Dumbledore, who probably studied Sophia extensively. That's total Mandy Midrash, but there you have it. Anyone that wise has got to be plugged in. But he said, words are, in my not so humble opinion, our most inexhaustible source of magic, capable of both influencing injury and remedying it. Isn't that so interesting? Words are a source of magic. So there's something about the words that we speak. And I don't even know if we're mindful that even just voicing and articulating certain thoughts, positive or negative, creates magic. When you say true things, it carries a force with it. And when you say negative things, you can sometimes feel the energy in the room change or the mood change or the contention rise. And so I love this, our most inexhaustible source of magic, capable of both influencing injury and remedying it. Such a great reminder about what we articulate, what comes out of our mouths. Are we influencing injury or remedying it? And this inexhaustible source of magic. I hope you are reading. I hope you're studying. I hope you're speaking truth. I hope you listen to things that are beautiful and true and uplifting. And might I add to this, this isn't in my notes, but I really feel strongly that I should mention that our self-talk is really, really important. If you're feeding your brain messages all day and they're negative, that's going to have a profound effect on you. That magic will work to your blessing or detriment. And so even the words that appear in our minds or that we say to ourselves are really, really important. One of my friends, Amy Robles, she's a life coach. She's tremendous. If you need anyone like that, she's your gal. She's the greatest cheerleader, very smart. And on her Instagram, and I'll put a tag to it in the show notes, she said that your brain has anywhere from 60,000 to 80,000 thoughts a day. And they found that close to 50,000 of those are negative. How in the world are you going to thrive, my friends, by feeding yourself full of so much negativity? The first place to start is in how you speak to yourself, in addressing your divinity and being positive about your efforts, about your willingness to try, about the love you have for others, even if it comes out all wrangled up and wrong. It's important that that inexhaustible source of magic that we have within ourselves is also used to build yourself, make you shine, make your light bright. So thank you, Dumbledore. That's at the very end of the Deathly Hallows. He also has this beautiful line that says, "It is our choices, not our abilities, that define us." Choice is everything, my friends. Choice determines everything about our lives. And I'm sure you're all familiar with several people who are actually tremendously gifted, and their choices are sometimes epically horrible. And the power of choice is always going to be stronger than your natural abilities. And then you also knew the people who maybe weren't that gifted, but just worked so hard, who were so diligent and did everything they could to be successful or to help or to learn or to get good grades or become proficient at something or really good at a sport or talent or writing, whatever it is. And that was the choice to do it every single day. So just a reminder about your choices. I'm always telling my children that there's no question of the gods being forgiven. I hope you all know that by now. There's absolutely no question of forgiveness being granted. I think to any sincere repenter, they are so willing to help us get on our feet, get us on our way. They're not about punishment. They're not about keeping you down. But I will say that life is often very, very unforgiving. And that some of those choices we make, life is very unforgiving with. And so take that into your calculations. Understand that certain choices will have inevitable consequences that you may not be able to extricate yourself from in this life. And that's something also to consider. It is our choices, not our abilities, that define us. Conversely, if you feel you aren't very able or not very gifted, your choices can make you one of the most incredible, amazing, wonderful persons on the earth. Your choices will define you, and your choices for good and light and beauty and love and trust and goodness and kindness and service will define you. That is something that will follow you. I'm going to have to do a whole nother podcast on this, but there's a queen in Egypt that I really want to talk about on another podcast. And that she really highlights this beautiful concept of making choices, not being defined or pegged down because of where you're at in time or because of how things are or have traditionally been. Some more Dumbledore wisdom. When Harry finds the Mirror of Erised, which is desire backwards for you non-Potterites, and it shows his mother and father, and he finds himself going there quite often to the room of requirement to look at the mirror and gaze into his parents' faces. Of course, he's an orphan. He's been very lonely. He's in a bad living situation until he becomes part of the wizarding world. But even so, when Dumbledore finds him out there, knows he's been visiting there more and more and getting kind of stuck in this position, he said, "It does not do well to dwell on dreams and forget to live." I've heard other psychologists say that depression is caused by looking backward and anxiety is caused by looking forward. One of the greatest gifts and abilities we can develop through our choices is to stay present, to live in the present, to be present, to give of ourselves with those who are in the present. When we dwell on dreams, we forget to live. When we're always looking back, we're not able to fully engage in the moment and what's in front of us. I keep thinking of Uncle Rico in Napoleon Dynamite. He's like, if only Coach had put me in and stayed, we would have won. And here he is, this washed up 40-year-old living in a van down by the river because he's so fixated on the state football game of Idaho circa 1985 or whatever year it is. There are some beautiful things, and family is a beautiful thing. And yet here's Dumbledore's wisdom of you can't get so caught up in it that you fail to have a life, that you fail to live in the present. From The Prisoner of Azkaban, happiness can be found even in the darkest of times if one only remembers to turn on the light. This one has a lot of meaning to me because Reflecting Light was born out of a very dark moment. This whole podcast came from a dark moment and from the darkness winning the fight, as I felt when Corona hit in 2020. I had to cancel my institute classes. I had to cancel my Hebrew classes, and the world seemed to just spiral into this darkness, and we became very isolated from each other, and you weren't able to go out. No one was in school. Everything's so masked, and everywhere was shut down, and we didn't gather like we used to. And it really got inside of me, and it really started to affect me. And I thought, I am so sick of this, and I am not going to let the darkness win. I'm going to fight back with the only tool I have, and those are my words. And it's the light that I've learned and I've been blessed with through study and prayer and diligence and really trying to learn. And that's where Reflecting Light was born. It really came out of me being so fed up with the darkness having its day and laughing at humanity and taking us down and pitting us against each other and isolating us from each other. And I just thought, I have to fight with the only thing I have, and that is my light and the few words that I'm able to articulate, however poorly that may be. I love that happiness can be found even in the darkest of times if one only remembers to turn on the light. My friends, if you're listening to this podcast, I guarantee you are a friend of the light, that the light is a precious thing in your life and that you treasure it. And so if you're going through a dark time, or if there are dark times to come, I hope you remember that your ability to remember, notice that phrase there, that's really, really important. It's not about, it's remembering who you are. It's remembering who you came from and where you came from, and that you have power and ability and divinity within you. And you can turn on the light. You can radiate light. You can push it into the world. You can share it. You can speak it. You can share it through your actions. You can serve. Please remember to turn on the light. If you are in a dark place, or if our world becomes darker, I truly, truly believe that it's those of us who are willing to share light and wield light and not let the darkness win. That's how we're going to make a difference. This quote is from the Goblet of Fire. It says, "Numbing the pain for a while will make it worse when you finally feel it." Wow, this is a loaded statement. When we experience pain, the desire is to block, to shield, to protect, to curl up, right? Kind of like cover your heart, put the armor up. But the fact is that feeling it is actually the best thing to do. Letting it come through, allowing yourself to feel it, letting it have its moment. Like Rumi said in the guest house, invite it in, give it a place to sit. And then it doesn't take hold of us. But numbing the pain will eventually make it worse. There's a brilliant presentation called An Anatomy of Troubles by Terrence Smith. I'm not sure if I've referenced it yet in the podcast, but I'll put the article online. He's a medical doctor. He was a psychologist or a psychiatrist, I believe, in Canada. And he has this brilliant essay or presentation that I've heard called the Sin Laundry Talk. And he talks about how ordinances of the Aaronic priesthood address sin. But the bigger load of laundry, right? He says we throw all of our laundry in and we throw up sin and affliction and adversity all into the same batch. Now, what happens when you launder a batch like that? If I throw all of my clothes in one batch, what happens to your whites? well, they get totally ruined, don't they? Right? Maybe your colors as well. And so he said, what we need to do is sort laundry. We need to say, this is sin, but the bigger pile, he says, is always adversity. That's the bigger pile. And yet we take the recipe to relieve of sin and apply it to adversity. Well, adversity isn't because of your choices. Adversity is something in your life that you don't have control over, that you didn't choose. And yet there you are in the thick of it. And he said, applying the principles of repentance like you would for sin is not going to work. And so he has this beautiful commentary on how the ordinances of Melchizedek priesthood are in place to help you heal from adversity. Now, isn't that a beautiful thought? In his ecclesiastical duties, how people would come in and want to deal with sin, but he always would see this huge pile of adversity in the other corner and try to treat that, try to show love, perhaps offer a blessing or, ordinances or things like that would help relieve that deep, deep pain. It's a beautiful thought. Now, what I wanted to say about this is he references the biblical story in the Garden of Eden where Adam and Eve are instructed to take the fig leaves and make aprons. And he says this is an example of the adversary taking the things of this world to try and cover up something. It's a metaphor for life because when we make a mistake or when something happens, sometimes we are tempted to take the things of this world and try and cover it up or numb ourselves to the pain. And so fig leaves have become actually a really beautiful symbol for me because you think about it, we take the things of this world, drugs, alcohol, sex, addiction, pornography, even just like any type of addiction, right? Gluttony, food, whatever it is. And we indulge in that. We take the things of this world to try and heal us from our trauma or from our scars or from the things that have really hurt us and damaged us. When it's really the things of heaven that offer true healing. And so I will put that in the show notes. I really, really encourage you to read it. If this quote speaks to you, if you feel there's something there, numbing the pain for a while will make it worse when you finally feel it. Please, if you're hurting, go to the gods. Go to these places and to these types of things that are made by heaven to help you recover, to help you heal. Taking the fig leaves and the things of this world will only exacerbate the problem. All right. From the Goblet of Fire as well, differences of habit and language are nothing at all if our aims are identical and our hearts are open. Now, if you recall in the Goblet of Fire, they bring in the different houses from the different countries and have this friendly competition. Like I said, I just got back from Egypt. And I have to say, one of the highlights of the trip for me is interacting with other Egyptians. They are wonderful people. They're delightful. They're funny. They're cute. At one restaurant, we were way out in a town called Menya. And there was these adorable 4 girls at this bougie restaurant eating their fruit cobbler and cafe au lait or whatever, playing cards. They all had the headscarves on and were just decked to the nines. And I just thought, those are some super cool girls. And we had to stop and ask if we could take their picture. And then, of course, we exchanged pictures and a few words and continued to just meet really cute girls or wonderful people on the street. And it's amazing to me that the difference between us is so much smaller than what's the same about us. We have so much more in common. And one of the benefits of travel, and really one of my favorite things to do, is to interface with another type of culture or people and learn that they're just the same as I am. They have so many of the same concerns and so many of the same likes and dislikes. And that's really important to remember, particularly at a time where we seem to be so divided and it seems the focus is on what's different about us rather than where we're the same. So another reminder that differences of habit and language are nothing at all if our aims are identical and our hearts are open. There's many, many more. I don't want to drag this out too much, but I'd love to hear your favorite quote or your favorite part of the Harry Potter series, books or movies, and why it's significant to you. What was wonderful about it? Please feel free to comment on the post on Instagram. It's at Reflecting Light Podcast. We also have a Facebook page, Reflecting Light Podcast, or our YouTube channel. We have a Reflecting Light YouTube channel that you can listen to the podcast on as well. I'd like to conclude with these last two quotes that I think are really, really important and beautiful, and probably one of my favorite things about this series. Well, first of all, before I do that, I have to say I usually always dress up like Trelawney. She and I have a lot in common, but really I'd have to say McGonagall is one of my favorite characters. Probably my very favorite character is Severus Snape. He's just so deliciously Snape. That's all I can say. Of course, Dumbledore, but probably one of my favorite Harry Potter moments is when Professor McGonagall incants the spell to make the stone knights in the castle jump down and come to life to fight that final battle against Voldemort. And she turns all giddily to Professor Sprout and says, "I've always wanted to use that spell." She's a wonderful actress. Let's close it up. Dark and difficult times lie ahead. Soon we all must face the choice between what is right and what is easy. As I say that, I feel the truth of that in my bones. That we all must face the choice between what is right and what is easy. There's a beautiful quote by Fyodor Dostoevsky, arguably one of the best writers of all time. Listen to this. If someone proved to me that Christ is outside the truth and that in reality the truth were outside of Christ, then I should prefer to remain with Christ rather than with the truth. Isn't that so beautiful? Let me read that again. If someone proved to me that Christ is outside the truth and that in reality the truth were outside of Christ, then I should prefer to remain with Christ rather than with the truth. I would add 1,000 amens to that. I hope I will always be found next to my Lord, the Lord I serve, and his lady, might I add. The time may come when we all must face the choice between what is right and what is easy. And I hope you'll find the courage to do what is right. I've been thinking so much about people in history with this recent travel experience, and I'm sure as they were making history, they weren't in there thinking, I'm making history. They were doing best with the days and the situations and the problems that were presented to them. And the same is true of us. We make history every single day. And we do that by doing the right thing and striving and seeking and finding and building. And it requires a lot of us, but I hope we're up for the challenge. I believe we are. The more people I meet, the more faith I have in us. And in that regard, I wanted to add this quote to that one by Sirius Black. I mean, wow. Probably, he's right up there with Snape, actually. And going with that last comment, Harry and Hermione and Ron, it's never like this perfect, easy solution. They just are doing the best they can. Like Harry teaches in the Order of the Phoenix. I'm just reacting. I'm just trying to do the best I can in the situations I find myself. But Sirius Black, oh man, that guy's a hero. He's wonderful. He's so many different things. And he has this, I want to end with his quote last. The world isn't split into good people and Death Eaters. We've all got both light and dark inside us. What matters is the part we choose to act on. That's who we really are. That's so true. You're really one choice away from maybe someone with a very different life. Maybe in the perfect storm, you would have had that life, or you would have made that series of wrong choices. And I think sometimes it's so easy to categorize people into good and bad, right? We're always looking to make those dividing lines, or to define goodness and badness and what exactly it looks like. And I love Sirius's beautiful insight here. The world isn't split into good people and Death Eaters. We've all got both light and dark inside us. If you recall, the Malfoys at the very end decide that their love for their son overrides anything else. Are they horrible people? Are they good people? They're both, right? As are we all. What matters is the part we choose to act on. That's who we really are. I hope this brings to mind all of the action you do and all of the times you make those choices to serve the light and to embrace it and make it part of you. And when those dark parts come up, that you figure it out and you let it go and you remain present and you continue to act on the light, or choose to act on the light. And of course, we can't actually conclude without the final Snape comment, always. That's such a loaded word after this series, isn't it? His love for Lily is the driving force in his life. And over decades, it's that love that propels him to good works. I love this comment by J.K. Rowling. She tweeted this in 2015. Snape is all gray. You can't make him a saint. He was vindictive and bullying. You can't make him a devil. He died to save the wizarding world. What a great commentary on how we all have some of both of that in us. That maybe we're neither saints or devils, but we're just people trying to move forward to come to the light. Always is a factor in his life that is the redeeming aspect of his life. And he actually spends his life on behalf of others. What a beautiful symbol of the King and Lord of everything, who also gave his life for others, but who was all white. I will say that. But I love this character of Snape as this grayness. For so many of us, there's a lot of gray. There's a lot of light and dark within us. And as Sirius says, what matters is the part you choose to act on. That's who you really are. Well, may the magic of your actions and your choices and the light and your bravery and your courage and your ability to stay in the game and follow your heart and give people the benefit of the doubt and use your words to lift and build. May all of that magic be part of your awesome Halloween weekend this weekend. That is my hope for you. Wishing you all love, light, and perhaps a little bit of magic.
Thank you for joining us for Reflecting Light with Mandy Green. If you enjoy this podcast, please leave a good rating and share it with your friends. And remember, your light makes the world a brighter place. Share it.